In this demo, I want to show you how you can data bind to datasets. Now, datasets are kind of falling out of vogue. I generally wouldn't use datasets in any new projects I was working on. I would favor using entities. But if you're stuck moving some legacy code over or migrating an application maybe from Windows Forms that use datasets extensively and you can't afford to rewrite all that code, I want you to see how you can easily still data bind to those datasets in WPF. The dataset we're going to be using here is a typed dataset, but I'll show you can also use untyped datasets. The schema is the same ZA database that we've been using, and it's got customer, order, and order status as a minimal part of that schema. The UI we'll be using for this demo is just the top portion of a demo that we've been using before that has the drop-down list of customers, and when you select one, it fills out the fields for first name, last name, and email for the selected customer. If we go to the XAML, you can see here's our combo box, and the binding is not really going to look any different here. It's going to say I'm expecting my data context to provide me a property called customers, and in that customers, I'm expecting a bindable collection of something. When working with data sets, the bindable something is going to be what's called a data row view. It's a view on top of a data row, similar to the iCollection view we talked about earlier, but one that's built into the overall schema of data sets. And bindings are aware of those. Then when it comes to specifying binding paths, such as the display member path and the selected value path here, these become column names. Now they could be strongly typed property names if you're working with a strongly typed dataset, but if you have an untyped dataset, they can just be the column name. Down below you can see we have selected customer.lastname.firstname.email, just like we had in earlier demos with entities. So the syntax at a binding level is no different if you're working with datasets or with entities. The only thing that's going to be a little different is the way you do the data access. So the first thing I need to do is declare a couple of properties that the bindings we're expecting in the XAML. Those are a customer's collection and a selected customer. The types of those properties, if I'm starting with the typed datasets, are going to be a customer's data table for the customer's collection and a data row view for the selected customer. The individual objects in the data table are actually data rows, but once you bind to them, it's actually going to be a data row view object that the binding is expecting to see. Otherwise, these are just dependency properties as we've seen in previous demos that will raise change notifications if their values are set. Next, we just need to load data using datasets. So the first thing I'll do is I need to set my data context to the window as I did in previous demos. I use a customers table adapter here, and I go out and I call get data on that table adapter. That's going to return me with a strongly typed data set. It returns me one of those customer data tables, which I can just write directly into my wrapper property for my dependency property customers. Next, I need to handle the selection. So I'll set the selected customer property to a data row view, which I can do by going to the customers combo and getting the selected item. If you try to cast that to data row, it's going to fail because it's wrapped it in one of these data row views at the point where you data bind here to the customer's collection. With that in place, I can go ahead and run. I can select a customer, and we can see the fields are filling in. It's really getting values out of the fields in a data row from a data table, as opposed to working with entities and properties. Now, just to show that this can also work with untyped datasets, I'm going to replace my customers property here with a data table one, a non-strongly typed data table. And then I'll go up to the top and replace my data loading by declaring a data set, an untyped data set. And then I create an instance of a SQL data adapter, do a select star from customer, pass an appropriate connection to it, and then do a fill on the adapter passing in the data set. Then to populate my customer's data table property, I can just go to the dataset.tables collection, and when you do a fill like this, it names the tables table, table 1, table 2. So that first fill actually populated a table named table. I could go rename that, but since I'm just grabbing its value here and passing it into my property, it doesn't matter. I don't need any changes to the XAML itself. I could go ahead and run again, and we can see things are populating just fine, even though we have no type information now. It's just an untyped data set with columns and rows.